quite the first one isn't as frightening as the second one, right? So I've got this company that I stopped paying a subscription to, right? And it was
Mm.
like for 62 quid a month. And this was in January. I stopped it, and the bank stopped the card. And because of the way they were able to get through, they kept using the old card details to keep taking money out of my account. So
Mm.
I've had to cancel it every couple of weeks. I've had to phone the bank and say, I've changed my card about 3 times, but they're still using the old details to take money out of my account. So in other words, some companies are so good at getting money out of you, right? No matter how many times you change your bank card, they can still take the money out your bank account. So that's one word of warning. The other word of warning is extremely frightening, right? On my other mobile device, I sent somebody a text and I said I've got to change my standing order, right? And to £209 for 1 month, right? I didn't change my standing order, but AI listened into my texts,
Oh,
Oh,
right?
freaking
And
hell.
it contacted the bank and changed my standing order.
mm,
Mm.
I
I
don't
did
like
not I
that.
did I did nothing to change it. So be very wary of everything that's going on with your bank accounts.
Ooh.
On that note, that's the modern day and age. Any news from you,
Nice.
Emma or David number two?
Yeah.
You got any news?
I've
No.
got no news. I haven't been anywhere.
Well,
Mostly,
by the way, we like your purple attire there, very actory.
yeah.
Or is that purple? Not purple, it's pink. Pink, red.
Oh, mine's pink. I
Fuchsia.
This
don't know what Dad's is.
this is
Is
Oh,
that?
look at that.
It's new. It's new. You only got it the other day.
I'm
yeah.
really impressed. I'm really impressed. Oh, well done.
We're
Um,
It's a
coordinated.
kind
Look,
of
see?
it's
exactly.
meant to be a seafaring thing, like
like
sailor
that.
job, and
Oh,
yeah.
good old Chepstow. Good old Chepstow. Just by the sea there.
Oh,
Um, well, by the river anyway. Right, Margaret. Anything from you?
Well, I read something a wee bit interesting about fairy tales and the origins of them.
Oh, let's have some of that. I'm just going to sit back and listen. Go on, let's have it.
Well, researchers at the universities of Durham and Lisbon have been doing research into the origins of fairy tales. Jack and the Beanstalk has roots going back 5,000 years.
Get off!
Yeah.
No, come on. You can't just say that. Come on, give us
Well, it
more
says
information.
that Beauty and the Beast, 4,000 years old, as is Rumpelstiltskin. And
Yeah,
there's
well, that's
something called The Smith and the Devil, which goes back to the Bronze Age, 6,000 years. And it says the tale could be traced back to Proto-Indo-European society when metallurgy very likely existed.
oh wow,
Isn't that amazing?
that is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I got to be honest with you. I want more information about all of that. I really do. Right.
Mm.
That is quite amazing. You can't just leave us hanging. I want more.
Well, I'll have to. Yeah, just I've got a friend whose his job is as a storyteller. He travels around telling stories, and some
Yeah.
of them are very, very, very old. I'm not saying they're as old as that, but that's his job. He became very ill when he was in his 40s and had to give up his job. And
Yeah.
he always liked researching and listening to old stories. And so that's what he does for a living. He's a storyteller.
Well, I've been doing that for years with you guys. Right. I said it. Right. What about you, David?
Oh, nothing, sorry.
Okay. Andy. Oh yeah, I gotta make Andy like second in command. Right,
No,
go on, Andy.
no, I'm afraid not. Nothing really to
Oh,
add.
hang
Okay.
on, Carl.
Apart from
I've
my
got
seat keeps
something.
collapsing.
Right. Go on then quickly, Emma.
Pyramids.
Oh, go. We can't have fairy stories and
Well
legends
remembered.
without pyramids. Go on, give us the pyramids.
So what is it? I mean, I've only just roughly seen about this, but what is it? they've discovered columns underneath the pyramids,
Yes.
haven't they? Have they?
Well, basically, Herodotus,
Mhm.
writing way back in 450 years BC, wrote about some kind of underground chambers underneath the pyramids. I think it was Herodotus anyway. And it was something related to the to a great library or something like that. So we've
Uh-huh.
known about this for quite some time, but it's trying to interpret what these things are.
Ah, I see.
Remember the pyramids are cut um, directly into a great stone plateau, a great sandstone plateau, which is riddled with stuff. So
Okay.
cool. Judith,
Yes, got
go
something.
for it.
You know, last week, and you were telling us about the grave at, I don't know how to pronounce it. Is it V in France or Vix?
Oh, Vic.
Yeah.
Vic.
Oh, oh my God, sorry. I've got it on the other thing and now I've lost it. Oh. And you said that there was loads of gold that was found. And
Yes.
I said, does anybody know where it is? And you said, look it up. So I've looked it up.
Oh, yeah. Go on.
All they're claiming is that one gold talk was found. So presumably everything else has disappeared and they've only kept the one.
So out of the 50 talks that were found, only one is now on display.
Being claimed to have been found. One was found.
Yeah, well, I was
Yeah,
quite.
so 49
yes.
have disappeared.
Or
So
maybe
that
50 have
settles that.
disappeared.
Yeah, they've just got a replica. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, well, there's no words for that. There's
No.
really not.
No.
There's really not. There's really not. So, right, okay. So what we are going to do, we're going to look at some wonderful things involving Danebury, and I've got this wonderful book here, um, which I was gonna sort of sample a bit today, but I just got a bit carried away on some specifics to do with Danebury Hill Fort, or Danebury Rings, or Danebury Castle. It's not a castle; it's definitely rings, and it's something that we mentioned last week. So that's what we're going to do. So let's just get straight onto the images, and there we go. And do you know, in about a month's time, we'll be reaching this, and we'll still be finishing in the daylight.
Yeah.
Because we're starting early and stuff, so that's all good. I gotta thank the good lady for making me a cup of tea. Thank you very much. And where are we? I want us to oh, okay, hang on. Nope, we don't want that. We love my baldric, the turkey. Nobody's ever met baldric here, have they?
No.
He does exist.
And baby baldric as well.
I am. Oh yeah, baby baldric. Yeah, not forget baby baldric. Yeah, we love baby. They both get lots of cuddles, my turkeys. I'm just trying to get onto the gallery, which I'm struggling to find out where it is. Hang on. Not there. Hang on. Can't find the gallery. Hang on a minute. I'm struggling a minute. Hang on. Where's my gallery photographs? Oh, there, got them. Good.
Well done.
Brilliant. Thank you. Oh, yeah, it's good to have praise now and again. I like having a bit of praise. Hang on, what's happened now? Oh, hang on. Oh, something. Oh, right. I've lost it again. Oh no.
Oh,
Right.
no.
Okay. Right. It's there. Right. Hang on. If I go back to you guys, right.
Over here.
Are you over there?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. If we go back to the sharing a minute, we had it then, and then we're going to go back to there, and good. Good. We're back on it, and hopefully we'll have the images now. Oh no, we've got to go for it again. Oh no. I don't know what's happened. Hang on. We'll get it.
My question is,
Go for your right. Go for it.
where
Yeah.
is Danebury?
We'll show you the map.
Is it in the in the?
Yeah, when he can find it, Dad.
Oh,
Yeah, it's there. You can see it.
yeah. What, Wiltshire or?
We'll show you on a map now. So that there is a map here. There it
Oh,
is.
there it is.
Yeah,
There it is. Actually, to be honest with you, it's not
Dorset?
far away from.
Is
It's
it
not far away from Chepstow at all. You could probably get there in an hour.
Yeah.
Is that
Mind
Dorset
you-
or Hampshire? Is it Dorset?
Mind you, on a good day, I was going to the film studios in Cardiff today, and I just thought, right, on my sat nav it said 1 hour. No, not 1 hour, 2 hours. Right,
Mhm.
3 hours later, I still hadn't arrived. There was a major accident on the motorway, right, and it was like watching something out of Casualty, right? There was about 10 ambulances, for 3 people. It was just one of those weird things. Anyway, Danebury. What we mentioned last week about Danebury was that this sort of links in with this abandonment of Iron Age sites. You know, these big hill fort sites, which we see happening in various times in the Iron Age. Danebury has rather interesting things about it, which sort of affect our overall interpretation of the Iron Age. And what we mean by that, what I mean by that, is that usually I'm talking about the Iron Age as a period of relative peace, but Danebury has a little bit of something different, and the word ritual slaughter comes in today, and the word shrines comes in today as well, and also storage pits comes in to mind today as well. So we see what an Iron Age chalk cut storage pit is like. So that's interesting, and also it sort of ties in with when I was excavating not in Cyprus, excavating in Spain, when there were storage pits everywhere, and there were storage pits in storage pits. You know, the Iron Age storage pits, and then later on it would be backfilled, and then the Romans would come along and they would cut into that earlier pit that had been backfilled, and then later on you've got Islamic pits that have been cut in, and loads of different things. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a little bit of a gander about storage pits, right? So what we're going to do, just sort of look at those storage pits there, skeletal remains, it's a bone, right? So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go straight into one of the areas that I'd like to do today, and it's very much involving a mixture of looking at sort of Danebury, there it is, and sort of then gradiating to the storage pits, and then quickly gradiating to human remains, because storage pits and human remains are very much linked. Yes, they are. So buried in time, the Iron Age. Now, lots of the work that we know about with Danebury involves the archaeologist Barry Cunliffe. And if any of you have actually ever watched Time Team, you'll see this guy Barry Cunliffe in Time Team. And I got to be honest with you, lots of the big greats in archaeology have either retired or passed on to the other world. Like Peter Reynolds with the Butser Iron Age reconstruction project, for one name. Now, when we think about Danebury and we really understand Danebury, the big excavations undertaken by Barry Cunliffe were taking place between 1969 and 1988, and he basically had a season a year excavating, and it's usually to get students through their paces and on through university. And believe me, excavating on an archaeological site for nearly 20 years, every single summer, is big undertaking. It really, really is. And there's a lot involved, and there's a lot of writing involved. Barry Cunliffe has been very lucky to publish his results. So Danebury was a site that we know existed before 500 years BC, but was really much coming into being this sort of wonderful site as you see it today, from about 500 years BC to 100 years BC. And one of the things that springs to mind with these monuments is that they're still there. Like, they still exist, and it's down to the fact that lots of the banks and ditches at these sites are quite high, and the ditches are quite deep. And it's strangely enough that it's almost as if these sites have just been abandoned forever, and there's been bits of farming, but nobody's bothered to fill in the ditches, and nobody's bothered to sort of flatten the banks, which is slightly different from another event, which is near in our close memory, well, which is in lots of our memory, which is the First World War. When, back in the 1980s, you might be wandering around, and you might actually bump into somebody that might actually remember the First World War. And the reason why I mention that is that when you think about the archaeology of the First World War, most of the big craters along the battlefield landscape of the First World War have now been filled in. Practically all of the trenches in regards to the First World War have more or less been filled in, right? So it makes you wonder how these types of monuments like Danebury have actually survived over 2,000 years, when in fact, in modern memory, why have two people just joined now? Andy, are you adding them in? Andy?
Yes, I have them.
Who have you just added?
Roger and Janice.
Janice?
Hiya.
It's good to have you, babe. We were talking about you, Janice, earlier on. You were mentioned in the chat, and you were mentioned in the way that Janice, we've only ever seen her once, and maybe we'll never see her again because once was enough. And I said once is never enough with a lady. Right. And Roger's turned up as well. So what we were talking about, we're looking at Danebury, and I'm glad you've joined us, guys. So we're looking at Danebury, and I was just trying to make a point, make something that we don't talk about enough. How have these things actually survived? They have survived. Right, the banks and ditches have survived, when in living memory, the trenches of the First World War haven't survived. Right, I think that's a really, really important thing. Why have these things survived? Bronze Age barrows in the British landscape have survived. They've survived all over Europe, right? Denmark, for example, you get these barrows everywhere, right? And they still survived when they're competing for agriculture. And it's a very intriguing question. And then you've got the question is, how have lots of these sites survived and others have completely disappeared, like whole towns from the Iron Age, like Geropolis, and whole towns from the medieval period, and whole towns from the Roman period have disappeared. And you're just thinking, there's no real answer to any of this. So what we've got with Danebury is very different than lots of other sites, and there in amongst that formerly excavated landscape are these pits. And as they've excavated lots of these pits, and these are actually storage pits cut into the chalk. These storage pits can be for anything from collections of statues of Lloyd George, or grain, or fruit, vegetables. You can store all sorts of things in storage pits. And one interesting thing was yesterday, we had a pumpkin left over from October last year, yeah, and I cut into it, and it was perfect. 6 months later, I know they didn't have pumpkins in Iron Age Britain, but the point is, if you fill holes with sand, and you put fruit and veg in them, the fruit and veg can last months and months and months and months and months. That's an old storage way of keeping fruit and vegetables. So in other words, you've got a really wonderful, prosperous, productive summer, and you've got all this fruit and veg. And how are you going to keep it? Well, bury it in the ground in sand, and it lasts. Well, what also turns out to be buried in the ground in these storage pits are human remains. So the remains of at least 300 individuals have been found at Danebury, which again is really unusual. When we've been talking about Iron Age hill forts, bank and ditched enclosures. It's very rare that we actually come across human remains. Yeah. And the other thing as well is investigating these storage pits. Less than 40 of the 300 individuals found in these storage pits are complete. They're disarticulated. Most of these were placed in disused storage pits, typically an Iron Age burial practice in southern England, from way back in the 500s. So basically, what you've got is somebody's passed away. Good old Eric, he's passed away, and what we're going to do? We got a storage pit over there. We don't want to use it anymore, right? We'll put Eric in there, right? And then just a little bit over there. That's where we live. Which is completely different, in complete contrast to the Roman world, for example. It was abhorrent to the Romans to actually bury people in amongst the living, right? So the pits are within the settlement area. There's actually within the area of Danebury, which is great. Not in special cemetery zones. Again, we've made that point. So the burials, interestingly enough, they're not really associated with grave goods. So they're put in pits in the ground. These former storage pits, and as you can see, there's loads of them. You know, there's hundreds, if not, well, I'm not going to say thousands, but there's hundreds and hundreds across the Danebury hill fort, bank and ditched enclosure landscape. And these are all cut into the solid chalk. So when they're talking about burying in these pits bits of skull and disarticulated gubbins, you can actually see that some of these storage pits ain't small. They're pretty big. You know, they're pretty big storage pits indeed. You know, look at the size of that storage pit. They're not small. So you know, they're not messing around with their storage things in these pits. They're really, really not. You know, there's something else going on. Right. Anyway, there's Eric. And how do we know it's called Eric? I've got special powers. So whole bodies deposited soon after death before the flesh had decayed. So that means the body's articulated. Right. Disarticulated means it's all over the place. A bit like this lecture. Or articulated, right, where it's all in one. And when you get a body all in one, it means that the body itself has been placed in the pit before it's rotted away, and before probably the body's a bit limp. Maybe they put it in the pit before rigor mortis is set in. I don't know, but basically you can actually see these are articulated sets of human remains. And what you also find is partial bodies buried sometime after the connective tissue had begun to rot. So basically, look, there's Derek over there, right? He's been out there rotting away for a week, right? We got him. Oh my God, the head's just fallen off, and oh, there's an arm there. Just chuck him in the hole, right? That's what we're talking about. So we got try and put the body together. We don't want the arm where the leg's meant to be, okay? No, you don't have a clue about anatomy, do you? Anyway, so what we got partial bodies put in here, right? And then we got a number of partly a number of partly well, you can't get partly articulated, they're disarticulated. So you got disarticulated remains, or semi-articulated. Oh, you disarticulated. Come on, get the caption right. Oh, I hate this. You know, you're reading notes and it says partially articulated, semi-articulated, or disarticulated. Can we just agree on disarticulated? Anyway, so what you've got a collection of bones just chucked in there. By the way, put that head down there. Don't look, children. Stop playing with that head. Put it in the hole. Do what you're told. Anyway, so one thing what they've got is they got 38 bodies, which you know they've got 38 bodies from a neonatal sort of standpoint. So obviously, you know, these are sort of stillborn or you know, so on, children that haven't really made it far in life. And then what you've got is then you're flowing all the way with all the 300 bodies all the way through to bodies ranging 45 years and beyond. So this is what we find. The problem is when you get disarticulated human remains, you've got the problem of trying to sex them, right? Trying to get an idea. That one's a bloke because he's got a hammer with him. Yeah, and that one's a woman because she's got clips in her hair. But unfortunately, you can't do that with this because most of the bodies have no signs of any evidence with them at all, right? So and obviously, if they're it's really difficult at times to work out who's who. But what they've managed to work out when they've managed to sex the bodies, 15 of these, what they've managed to 15 out of the 300, which is all right, good sample. So that's 1,500, so that's 5%. Is that right? I think that's right. 5% of the collection of bodies were males aged between 14 and 35 and 3 months. And so that's rather interesting. So so where we're going with that, and then so that's 14 to 35%, and what my notes are telling me is that that's sort of a good, nice, gentle age group for these human remains. But you could actually start say that these are generally youngish, really, between 14 and 35. And what does this tell you? Very interesting. Anyway, back to bits of human remains. We like a bit of human remains, don't we? And look at that caption there, which is slightly different from lots of stuff. What should I say about the Iron Age and hill forts? There you go. 3 male skulls showing evidence of weapon injuries. Ah, now, Carl, it's slightly different from what you've been saying. But Danebury is a different site, may I add. It really is. So the partial burials, the disarticulated remains, there we go. Oh, God. Partial burials now. Make up your blinking mind. Including those where arms and heads were missing. Do you remember where you put that arm? No, the dogs ran off with it. All right, then. Can you children stop playing with the skulls? Now, I can't find them. Anyway, so basically, there's bits missing, right? And there's no clear evidence that there's no clear evidence, however, for violent dismemberment. And the suggestion is that they were buried after the flesh had decayed. Oh, stop leaving the bodies around. However, there are 15 isolated skulls found in pits, which were mostly male that we could work out. And these could represent severed heads. Yeah. There's one thing that I don't usually talk about in the Iron Age because it's not something that I like talking about or really believe, but because I'm looking at a different point of view. But the point is that we've got 15 isolated heads. We've lost your bodies. We don't know where they've gone, so we'll put the heads over there, right? So we've got 15 severed heads, and some archaeologists would see that these may represent the result of headhunting as war trophies. Now, for me, that's problematic because it goes against the grain, and the reason for me it goes against the grain is that there is something, if you read some books, there's something called the head hunting cult in the Iron Age, right? But if I use my learned brain and say, actually, in the Neolithic period, they were doing something else with isolated heads, right? We'll just remind us of a demonstration, right? Uncle Theo, right, passed away. Yeah. And this is the Neolithic period. This is like 5,500 years ago on the 14th of October at 12:15, right? So Theo's body is dragged into what we'd call the causewayed enclosure. Stonehenge originally started off as a causewayed enclosure, by the way. And it was like causewayed enclosure. It'd be like a wooden platform in the middle, right? So what you do, you put Uncle Theo on there. Sorry, Uncle Theo, I gotta go ploughing in the field, right? So they're out ploughing in the field, right? And hey, there's a raven over there. It just flew off with part of Uncle Theo's arm, right? It's basically called sky burial. You'd expose the body, right? And then what you do after a little while, after a few weeks, after the wretched smell after David Mesa, the archaeologist, was the wretched smell and the putrefied bodies and all the rest of it at causeway enclosure sites. After the skull itself has become disarticulated from the rest of the body, it's fallen off the platform and it's rolling around on the floor. You pick up the skull and say, "Oh, look, Theo," and what you do. You say, "Right, look, Theo, I haven't visited you for the past few weeks, right? Because I've been ploughing in the field. But what we're going to do with your head now, right? We're gonna have a pole, right? Which is going to be on our family causeway enclosure pit mound, right? And what we'll do, we basically poleaxe the skull, right? And the skull is now looking out at us farming. So hey, Theo, you wave at Theo because he's looking out as we're doing agricultural stuff, and he's a family member, which is slightly different from trophy head hunting, right? Can you see the point there? So I'm not always thinking that this head cult thing is real, because it might be that you've got somebody that you deeply loved, and what you want to do, you want to poleaxe their skull, and you want to have them looking out at you, and you want to sort of see that you're doing well in life, because they're no longer with us. So what we've got is that we've also got you can imagine this, can't you? You can just like go back in the pit, right? There's a pit like this, right? So you've got a collection of skulls, right? And then you've got a collection of arms. It's saying that there are 211 isolated bones that were found. Nothing else with them. Mostly long bones, like the good old femur and a good old humerus, right? Big old long bones, femur, leg, humerus. That's the arm. So anyway, so they're mostly long bones from the right side of the body. So maybe it's a bit of OCD. Somebody's like, right. I'm only collecting the right bones from the right hand side of the body, and we're going to put them in this pit. You can keep the left ones over there, right? It's likely that the bones are collected after the flesh had rotted away. So it might be that they're actually doing sky burial practices in the Iron Age, which is rather interesting, because there's some. I've mentioned this a couple of times, and you read this in sort of Iron Age books on the Iron Age, right? I was going to make a joke then and say written by Iron Age authors, but it is April Fool's Day, so there you go. And basically, what you are finding is that it might be that bodies are being exposed, and they're only collecting the bits of bone that are left from sort of preying ravens and wolves and right. So that's the interesting thing that's going on, that there might be sky burial stuff going on. So, look at this scene. Look at that there. Now, there's a song here, "When Two Tribes Go to War." Anyway, good song. But anyway, so think this is something that I really don't talk about at all in the Iron Age, because there's little evidence for it. But maybe there might be a little bit of fracas going on near Danebury or thereabouts, because there's more people. It's densely populated. Well, not really in modern terms, but for Iron Age people, there's a lot of people living in Hampshire and Wiltshire and so on, in that sort of southern bit above the Isle of Wight. So the partial articulated bodies were dumped into pits, and the bones were often scattered and mixed. Right. I tell you what, mate. You've been thieving those You've been thieving those left femurs, right? Just chuck them in the pit now. And as for you, Tony, chuck the little bones in there. Anyway, so this is what's going on. So and what they're also finding as well is within these pits with the human remains, they're finding occasional sling stones and animal bones. But there's no evidence. There's no evidence of actual butchery. Nobody's, eating. There's no sign of cannibalism, right? As there is still today in Arnside. Skeletal remains on these remains are on display in Andover Museum. Interesting enough, the Museum of the Iron Age at Andover. Did you know that existed? There's a whole museum to the Iron Age Andover. They include 5 skulls, plus the complete skeleton of an adult male aged between 30 and 40. and the complete skeleton of an adult male aged 17 to 25 years. It could be a bit more specific, couldn't it? And a number of disarticulated bones displayed in the manner in which they were found during excavation. So I think what they might be talking about is this. This is what is on display in the cabinet. You know, that's 3 of 5, and probably a little bit of reconstruction of this set of human remains, which I think is a bit sad, really. You know, I remember when I used to go to Cyprus with my parents. There was a museum or a site, Akrotiri, and you used to be able to see this sort of sad set of human remains in a cabinet, and I used to feel very, very sorry for what was going on there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to what I'd like to do is I would like to frame the ritual slaughter, you know, because there was an article printed on Danebury in 2019. How we missed that in our classes, I don't know. But anyway, but we'll do that. But before we do that, I want us to sort of have a little pensionly look, right, and sort of try to understand a little bit more about this site with a few images, right? And we'll go to these. There we go. And there we go. What was the Iron Age like? It's bloody hard work, mate. Danebury Iron Age Fort, good old Hampshire. So let's complete where we were last week, because we did start looking with some more with a little bit of look about Danebury. So if you can remember, here's a recap on what we mentioned about Danebury. Danebury was believed. And Judith believes this entirely as fact, that this is the court of King Arthur, right? And we know that Danebury was first excavated back in November the 14th at 5:15 in 1859 by the archaeologist Augustus Wollaston Franks. Can you imagine having a name like that? My lecturer is Augustus. I'm going to change my name, guys. Remember, Augustus karl-james Langford. That's good. So basically, what they did initially, the first work that they did was to actually clear out a storage pit, which is actually really interesting. That they're actually interested in storage pits, you know, and this sort of there you go. Like a storage pit. They first cleared out a storage pit. Yeah, that's the first thing they did, and I think that's great, actually, because usual antiquarians in 1859 are interested in finding gold, right? But the storage pit itself, one of the storage pit that they found was 2 meters deep. You can imagine. This archaeologist going in, antiquarian. I can't get out. It's taller than me. And was 1.5 meters in diameter. So it's a little bit smaller than these ones, right? Well, actually, not as deep as these ones. And they were not able to ascertain the purpose. And it's really, in a way, if you're not going to find anything in them, it's really difficult to ascertain the purpose, because they were cleaned out on a regular basis. So, and they were fired. What we mean by fired, they would, to get rid of like contaminants like ergot bacterium. That would come along with barley and stuff. If you've got ergotism inside you, you go a bit nuts, and it's you go around biting people and killing people and stuff, and it's not really good, right? So you don't want ergotism. So to destroy ergotism, what they would do, they would set light to the former storage pits of grain, and that would be it, right? They get rid of everything. They pack it with small bits of wood and straw and just set light to the thing, right? So that destroys all the evidence, except what we do find occasionally is the charcoal remains of the barley, right? But not in this case in 1859, but he was still intrigued. It's a similar image to what he's probably excavating. And this is an interesting thing that I want to mention that I didn't really mention last week. So I'm going to read it out in full, right? And it's called Hill Fort Mania, right? So now, how do I explain this? In archaeology in Britain, we've gone through phases of mania, right? So that one 1 minute we're into the Romans, and then the next minute we're into medieval villages, and the next minute we're into forts, right? So the first widespread investigation of hill forts was carried out in the last part of the 1900s by another one, Augustus Pitt Rivers. Remember the Pitt Rivers Museum. Pitt Rivers' work on the hill forts of Sussex led him to the conclusion that most hill forts were built in the Iron Age. Up until that point, people thought they were Roman in origin, hence why they called them forts. And it paved the way for future work on hill forts. In the 1920s and 1930s, there was hill fort mania in British archaeology. By 1940, about 80 had been archaeologically excavated. Well, it's not a lot, really, folks, because there's over 5,000 in Britain. But 80 is good. Remember when you're... And some of them were excavated by the very eminent Sir Mortimer Wheeler and Tessa Wheeler. And one of those examples is Maiden Castle in Hot Hill, which isn't too far away. That's in Dorset landscape. So then comes in this guy, Barry Cunliffe. He decided to examine a single hill fort and its surrounding territory in an attempt to shed light on Iron Age society, its politics and population. And one of the things that what Barry Cunliffe was trying to say was that a hill fort shouldn't be just looked as it's just one thing, right? It can't just be seen as a hill fort. It needs to be set within the surrounding play of the farmsteads, woodland, agricultural landscape, wells, all the rest of it, right? So what he wanted to do, he wanted to look at this and he wanted to look at the landscape. And the landscape is owned by Hampshire County Council at the time. So it was great. So he's able to just go, look, I'm an archaeologist, right? Can I do an excavation every single year? And I'll tell the world how wonderful the county council is. Yeah, you can do it. As long as we don't have to pay for anything. Good. Over 20 odd seasons, archaeologists spent examining the site. They looked at the defences and the gateway. And as we showed last week, we showed some images of the 57% of the interior that had been excavated. So one of the things that they were doing was that they were excavating these pits, but they were also not only finding buildings, but they were actually finding temples, actual temples. Cool, isn't it? So but lots of the roundhouses and square buildings that they were finding, right, which weren't temples, were in fact normal everyday houses, for local bog trotters like us lot. And they worked out that there was about 300 people living at the site of Danebury, which again is different from any other normal hill fort in Britain. So what we get is most hill forts in Britain, you don't see people living there, right? They're not really populating hill forts. It's quite scattered. There's a few people living at Maiden Castle, and the rest of them are living around Maiden Castle in farmsteads and like in open plan sort of farmsteads with no banks and ditches around them. That's where the peaceful thing comes in, right? The peace movement, peace, folks. But anyway, so what we've got is that it was the lengthiest investigation of any hill fort in Western Europe. So they've excavated 57%. That's one of the questions. Whenever I go to archaeological sites with people, right, it's because we'll be going to Killeen, right, in the near future, right, and Roger's coming, and going to put Roger on a pedestal. And Roger loves coming in my car. He loves it. He's coming with us. What's that, Rog?
I got enough tablets that I can manage it,
Roger, Roger, I'm trying to make you out as a really nice bloke, and you can cope with the stress that I cause you while I'm driving. Roger, leave it out. Yeah, exactly. Oh, I got to be honest with you. Roger went on a trip with me. I had 3 people in the back of the car, and Roger was squashed up against the spare tire.
Yeah, great.
We were driving through Cardiff.
Never again.
We get out the car. No, it's okay. So we went on the motorway and they're thinking they're holding the arms. They're going, no, we don't want to go.
But see, when you wanted me to blow up the tyre.
Yeah, and the other thing as well is
You never
I
know,
noticed
God.
at the end of the day, right, they decided to get lifts off everybody else. Anyway,
I borrowed Phil's phone to solve things anyway.
yeah, well, yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Hmm.
So the one thing that we never ever totally excavate any archaeological sites, and the reason why is so that we can go back in future generations and check the results of those archaeologists, or we can do more work, or the thing is, when there's a point to be made here, I got to make it when they were excavating at Maiden Castle, for example, not Danebury. Sir Mortimer Wheeler was like saying this and that, and he was making remarks that there's like a war cemetery at Maiden Castle. Well, Maiden Castle was well abandoned before the Romans got there. It wasn't associated with the siege at Maiden Castle under Vespasian in 44 AD 44. And so when we go back and we excavate, we can actually find out that actually some of Sir Mortimer Wheeler's early ideas of dating were wrong. But then again, he's allowed to be wrong because they hadn't invented radiocarbon dating when Sir Mortimer Wheeler was actually excavating at Maiden Castle. But we did have radiocarbon dating when Barry Cunliffe is excavating this site from the late 1960s. And the other thing to check the archaeology, to basically, you're doing a bit of radiocarbon dating, and you've got some dates. But when you're thinking, right, we know what these things are now, right? We didn't know before. So what you do, you go across the rest of the site, the 43% of the site which hasn't been excavated, because 57 has been excavated, and you're able to, whilst you're doing magnetometry readings, i.e. geophysics across the site in 1997, you're able to work out that those circular things, not mini roundhouses for dwarves, but you're able to work out that they're actually storage pits, and that's really, really important stuff. So, and the other thing as well is and this is very important when we talk about Iron Age hill forts in Britain. We can't really say why people started building them anyway, because nobody's writing about them. For example, Is and Sid down the road decided to build a hill fort because they decided to build one. Fanny and Craddock decided to build a hill fort because they wanted to show off. And Derek and Dave decided to build a hill fort because it sounded like a good idea. We don't really know why they built these, because there was so much effort in them. But I think by now you probably know my thoughts about building a hill fort. And my thoughts are just basically thinking about, that they're not to, to have people buried in storage pits. We might be building these hill forts because it might be good because you've got a protection to keep your grain safe within these storage pits. You can have the 4-poster structures to sort of keep some of your more vulnerable animals safe. It's a place that you can trade. All these different things come into play. It is impossible to state with certainty every significant event in the hill fort's history, or many at all. So what we're talking about that is that we look at 400 years, 500 years that this site's in use, and we get able to work out 1 or 2 events across that period of time, and when in fact our normal everyday lives have so many different events going throughout the year. And that's one person. So we can only get a slight traceable identification of what's going on at these sites generally, not just this Danebury site, across them all. And dates are very vague as well. And some had banks and ditches, hill forts being built, and others had vitrification where the banks and the banking's being set alight. These sites are being remodeled. If you look at Maiden Castle, it's being rebuilt over and over again. And it's trying to not come up with too many overall assertions with this site. And Danebury itself is an area of 5 hectares. Now, we looked at that Vic site last week. The enclosed site of Danebury is 5 hectares, and obviously you've got the rest of the landscape around it. But the Vic site last night, you're looking at up to 45 hectares, and the much bigger stuff in France and Germany and so on. And what we've got 2 gateways. We've got numerous sets of banks and ditches, and obviously thinking about these buildings being very reliant and very needy, and just thinking the entrance into the hill fort there, again, back to the original point I made at the beginning, how are these things survived in the state that they have? They're still there. This is not stone, this is mud and clay, right? And it hasn't eroded away, and they're still there today. So thinking about the granaries, which are in the storage pits, and you've got roundhouses everywhere. One minute you've got a storage pit there, and the next minute it's filled in. You've got a house above it, and then over there you've got a storage pit, and you put some human remains in there, and you might have a paddock above it for some horses and stuff. So you've got lots of different sizes of hill forts across Britain, and none of them really stick to sort of one phase or anything really consistent. And one thing that might be useful, right, is I haven't got an image to illustrate this, and I actually found one last week. Right, I'm gonna go out of my images a minute, and I'm gonna see if I can. I'm gonna see if it's still there. No, it's not. Right, so I had an image last week to sort of illustrate what I want to show you now. So we got back over to Baldrick. And what it is, David's insistent that I'm not allowed to step foot in Arnside unless I bring Baldrick with me. That's what David said. He said, "Don't come up to Grange. I'm not coming over to see you unless there's Baldrick." Right. So I've got to bring him up with me. You can imagine him now getting out of the car. The first thing, he looks at David and he gobbles. That's a sign that he likes you, David. So there you go. So I'm just there was an image last week amongst all these ones online. So excavation images, which sort of illustrated what I'm about to explain now. I did actually show it last week. There was a wonderful cross-section image of the site, which actually showed the banking. And I'm just trying to scroll through this a minute. Where is it? Or we might just have to go with the one that we've already seen. I can't find it. Anyway, it was here last week. But what we are going to do, if we enlarge, hang on a minute. There. Oh, look at that there. I tell you what, that's what I was looking for. I tell you what, this is well worth it anyway. Tell you, look at that. Isn't that great? So this next, when I'm explaining this, it explains it quite well. So what you've got is in all that there, that's the banking. That's the section of the banking. That's the rampart itself. You can see the different layers, can't you? And where you've got a simple rudimentary sort of, you've got, hang on, there. You've sort of got that there. You've got all these different phases. You can another phase there where they've added to it. That's going to be the first phase there of what we've got at Danebury. And I'm excited by this because I'm glad I found it. So we know there's something going on at Danebury, say about 600 years before the birth of Christ. But by about 550, that sort of first set of defences there, just above that chap there, that's the first rampart behind a ditch. Right, so the ditch is on the outside and you've got the rampart on the inside. Now, that's an interesting point there. Ditch on the outside, rampart on the inside. When you look at Neolithic sites, which are thousands of years older than this, you get the bank on the outside and ditch on the inside. That's how you can work out the difference. So, say, for example, you go to somewhere like Avebury. You go in the middle of Avebury and you've got this massive whopping ditch, and then you've got the bank. that makes it a Neolithic site because and then you go into a Bronze Age site there. But you can tell that these are Iron Age because the bank's on the inside and the ditch is on the outside. It's really important there. So what we've got when the ditch was cut, so you've got to cut the ditch first to get the chalk rubble fill, and this builds a rampart. And then what you do, you add to this turfs that you cut from the surrounding landscape. And then what you do is you try to use material like timber, making a box face on the outside. And I got to mention something as well. I really got to mention something. It's in my head. Don't let me forget this thing in my head. Right. So what you've got, you might actually start off with a box, right, with like a beam there, right. So what's happened as that's rotted away, what you've got is a triangular profile, right? And unfortunately, I've got to get back on again. So sorry, guys. I got to tell you something really interesting. A second. Oh, we're back again. There you go. Right, this thing in my head that I'm thinking of. Sorry, I'm just it's all coming to me. You know what? Right. I used to think, right, that I had a problem with a certain thing that people were explaining in archaeology because nobody had ever explained it. You know, when we used to get time team and they used to excavate Roman forts, right? And then they used to go through the bank, and they used to work out that the Romans would turf build their banking. So you'd have a square turf face up, alongside you have a square turf face down, square turf face up, and then you would repeat that above, and you'd make this sort of rampart out of these turfs. And it was quite. And I used to think that's not possible, right? And the reason why I used to think that's not possible is that you'd have to have grass to be able to do that. And you know what? The answer has happened to us because we've had the sheep in one field, and they've grazed it out, right? The grass itself is so fine, right? That we can cut sods. And I thought that's what the Romans did. They brought a flock of sheep in, it grazed the area, and then what you've got, then you can cut the sods of earth and you can create your rampart. But you've got to get the sheep in, folks, first. So I thought I'd add that one in there. Right. So what we've got two gateways into this site, and you know the gateways themselves, you know, really impressive gateways. And you know you've got a 4 meter wide gap, you know, which is interesting. You get a cart between that. So at least 50 years after the rampart was first built, it was raised with the addition of more chalk material because you can tell the layers there. So whether this is all in this phasing, I don't know. It's difficult to tell. And this is basically interpreted as maintenance work when the rampart began to collapse as the timber box started to rot. So basically the as you can tell, right? So the effect is that when these timbers themselves start to rot, everything that they've held in starts to sort of displace to the side, creating the V profile. Sometimes like a curved sort of convex sort of arrangement. But so what they've done, they've added. So instead of bothering with this box stuff, what they've done, they've just added extra layers on. That's what they've done. So it makes it easier. It's just like, you know, just add to it. But doing it that way, having this like triangular profile means that you're using more of the area of the fort actually. But they didn't seem to care. So that's what they did. And obviously, every time the soil is displaced, it fills up the ditch as well, which is what's going on. So what you've got the really interesting gateways, and the gates were burnt down. What we're finding, the archaeological evidence is that when it was excavated by our friend Barry Cunliffe, that the gateways had actually been burnt down at some time. Whether they were burnt down deliberately, we don't know, but they were burnt down. And interestingly enough, if we can go, I love that. I don't want to leave it, but we are going to leave it. But there you go. But really like that illustration, a mixture of clay, stone, and stuff. But what we've got to do, we've got to go on to a bit of the entranceway, right? And bit of entranceway. Oh, well, that's a bit of entrance there. There we go. Very odd entranceway, that, isn't it? There you go. But what they're saying, interesting enough, listen to this, guys. What I've got to say, and there's a comparison with the Roman period here. For a short time, the hill fort, the archaeology told us that the hill fort was gateless. They didn't need gateways into the hill fort. And you're just thinking, did I just make that statement? You've got this really complicated entrance, but without gates, a gateway being hung, right? And they can tell that because of wear in the soil, and they can tell that because the post holes are not occupied with posts, and they're thinking, there's no operational gate into the site, and isn't that slightly against the fact that this is a defensive site? Yeah. So in other words, you could just, come on, boys, just walk in. It's easy. There's no gate there. Just walk in. So in other words, that tells us a little bit more about their mindset, that these are not really in the main defensive sites. And actually, there's a comparison there when we think of, for example, the some fortlets along Hadrian's Wall. What we do find is with some of those fortlets along Hadrian's Wall, they've got no gateway. So in other words, people can walk back and forth. So it's like a customs, right? We don't need a gateway, guys, right? Be very good, you Picts. As long as you don't bother us, we won't have a gateway there, right? It's a bit like a sketch from Frankie Howard, but this is what's going on. So this is how we're able to really work out what these sites are about, and it sort of paints another angle to the respectful understanding of the archaeology. And look at all that there. Look at these sort of, you've got the archaeologists there, and you've got these big post holes, and you've got the arrangement of little post holes. It's all happening. It's really all happening. Look at the scale of some of these post holes as well. So I got to quickly get. I'm very aware that we've done over an hour, and I haven't got through half of what I wanted to do tonight. So which is a shame. So what we've got various different changes to the ditches. At one stage, by about 400 years BC, they're having to redig the ditch because it's been filled in with lots of the stuff from the banking. And the ditches themselves become a V-shaped ditch with the V profile of the rampart, and the ditches themselves are to be seen in some places as 6 meters deep, and in some places 12 meters wide. What the hell's going on here, right? So what they've done, the wooden box was abandoned in favor of just having a sloping sort of, they just, let's not bother with the box thingamajig. Let's just have like a V-shaped rampart with a V-shaped ditch. And then what they're doing is, at part of the site, they're actually creating a dry stone wall on the top of it. So this is really, really interesting. And I don't know how, I can't really go with my notes here. It says that in one spot of Danebury, right? So if we can sort of go back to the images that we had earlier on, back to Baldrick. I could write a book, Back to Baldrick, couldn't I? Back to Baldrick. There's a book there.
You were the bit.
Yeah, back to Baldrick. Back to. Right. He's not for Christmas. You know that, right? Baldrick's not for Christmas. I keep warning you. He's my friend. I can't. You know what? Right, I sing to Baldrick every single night.
Oh well, I can't believe that.
I tell you what, right? I sing to him every night. If I doze off, right? David knows this as a fact. If I doze off, right? And it's like 3 in the morning. I go out and I go out to Baldrick and I sing to him. His favorite thing is Tom Pace's Maybe. Deep inside the forest is a door. His snoot goes up in the air. He loves it. Right. Anyway, back to this. We've got this. Is that they reckon that if you add the original height of the stone wall, which was only like a couple of meters, right, and it was dry stone, mind you, right, and the bank and the depth of the ditch.
It's freezing.
Hello?
Oh, we can't hear you.
I can hear you, Anne.
Yeah.
I can hear you.
What? Okay. Where are you?
He's falling in a ditch.
Come back to us. We didn't mean it.
No.
Oh, dear.
Let me check my
Did
notes.
Yeah, we
Did
can.
somebody,
Hmm.
what? Did somebody say they couldn't hear me?
Yeah, we couldn't
Yeah,
hear you.
you-
Suddenly, just with the picture of the aerial view, it just suddenly the
Right.
sound went off.
But you can hear me now.
Yes.
Yeah.
What I was trying to say, right, a whopping 16 meters from the top of the stone, dry stone wall to the bottom of the was 16 meters. Why? Why do they need it? Oh, maybe in the winter months it's like a sledging thing, all the way around.
Where are
So-
those bits on that aerial view?
They're all over the shop. They're over the pits across the entire site.
Are those just the little brown shaded bits that I can see?
They're trees.
Couple of trees.
I
They're
can see
trees.
loads of trees, but there are
Oh,
little
right.
round
Yeah,
shaded bits.
They're across the entire site. There's loads of them, all shapes and sizes. They really are. They're across the entire site. Oh, actually, we go on to that because basically we're remodeling the site, we're remodeling the gateways, we're remodeling the ditches, and eventually, what they're saying is the southwestern gateway, at one stage was just abandoned, and they just, why do we need a southwestern gateway? We'll just use the other one. And what they've got is that the fort is listen to this. The fort is populated with these holes in the ground with it's called 4 to 6 post structures. So in other words, you've got 4 posts sticking up in the air, and you've got a platform on it and a little hut with a little ramp, and then you just you keep some grain above the ground. You keep some little lambs in there, right? That's what you do. You keep all these post holes across the entire site, and there's lots around as in various phases over and over again. And then what you do is then they discovered that the center of the site had loads of shrines. You see that there? You got these shrines, and you got you got all these pits everywhere, and then the center of the site is dominated with little shrines. And then what they do now know is that there were all these pits everywhere. There were all these 4 poster structures, right? Or 6 poster structures, and then what you have is the shrines are in the middle. So this is really, really interesting. We haven't actually talked about shrines at all. So it's referred to as a multi-valet hill fort. So before we have our break, which we're going to have in a few moments, Danebury was abandoned around 100 years BC, in common with the trend across Britain for hill forts to fall out of use around that time. And once again, the East Gateway was deliberately burnt down, and it was not replaced. They just left it. And most of the inhabitants deserted Danebury, and groups of bodies were disposed of in charnel pits. So in other words, they used the site a bit like a burial site. It was like a cemetery. Now, that's where we used to live. We're going to use a cemetery now, but some people still live there, and they used it for grazing as the overall site decayed. And they do believe by the time the Romans actually got to Danebury, it was actually one big farm of one big 5-hectare farm landscape, and that's basically as we see one of the ditches today. So what we are going to do, we're going to talk. We're gonna have a cup of tea. Top of the world to say. And you know what? I'm gonna have my little nibble of my cake.
Little nibble? What?
Steady.
I have a
Hold it
nibble.
down.
Have a nibble. Actually, Roger. Yeah, I didn't do that thing in my live show about talking about Abba Nibble. Has anyone ever seen that film, Carry On at the Khyber?
Yep.
Where he says, where he talks about Abba Nibble?
Mhm. A nibble.
Time for tiffin.
Yes, he remembers.
What's tipping?
A time for tiffin. I'm loving it. So
A
yeah,
lovely northern delight, perhaps.
Abba Nibble. Abba Nibble. Abba Nibble. Right, I'm just trying to put some light on. Right, here we go. Here we go. Abba Nibble. Abba
Oh,
Nibble. Abba Nibble. Yeah. Oh, don't I look good?
No,
Look
no.
at that. If you leave me now. Right, there you
It's
go.
like in your mother's front room
By
again.
the way, Janice had to come back to see if last time it was actually like a dream or something. She's
No.
she had to come back.
That should be a
Where's
new
Anne
title,
tonight?
Carl.
What's that?
Archaeological nightmares.
Exactly. True. So right, Janice, where's Anne tonight?
I don't know. I was expecting
No.
her to be on.
Right.
Oh,
Okay.
what you got
I
there?
haven't rung her up because I didn't realise she wasn't there.
Right. So can I have this quick discussion with you? So you've paid your yearly membership. Yeah?
Yes.
And you know about the 2 monthly class fees as well, yeah?
No. I mean, I know
Well,
they
well-
exist, but I don't know how much or how to pay them.
Oh, right. Okay. I'll just tell you, right? Every 2 months, right? It works out £25 a month. Every 2 months, I basically say to everybody, chuck £50 this way, and that does the classes for the next 2 months for you. That's basically it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So it's so, oh God, so you would be a different thing than everybody else because you started slightly differently, right? So, I don't know if you're going to start tonight on a regular thing, then it'll be £50 from tonight, and that
Yeah.
will then do. Oh yeah, it would be
Till
perfect, wouldn't it? Yeah. So
Till
your
the
cycle
1st
would,
of June.
yeah, your cycle would start this month, and then next month, and yeah, that's ideal. Yeah.
Oh,
Right. So yours is going to be 50 shekels from April and May, and then everybody else then their cycle is going to be May and June.
I'm with you. Yep.
I'm not.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, by the way, before we have a break, can I show you this cake? I've got to show you this cake. Hang on a minute.
yeah,
Right, where's-
cup of tea, too.
Wait, shut up, Rog. Shut up, Rog. I'm not interested in anything you've got to say. Right, Roger, I'm the boss now. Right, I'm the one in charge. Right. Look at this cake. We've got this weird. We've got this weird bakers in town that just makes weird cakes. Right, there's one of the weird cakes. It's got like blueberries and weird ice cream icing on it, like stuff. Yeah.
All right. So
Well,
like an iced bun.
Green.
A nice bun.
It looks
Oh,
green.
by the way, talking about having an iced bum, I went into McDonald's today,
Oh,
right?
nice bun. What?
So I'm driving back, and guess what? They've got Shamrock milkshake.
Right.
What?
What's
Shamrock
that?
milkshake? What's that?
Well, basically, Shamrock milkshake is
Oh,
actually
Shamrock.
a mint flavored milkshake.
Right.
Ugh.
Oh, weird.
Ugh.
Green. Yep. Yeah.
Why isn't it a
It's
Kendall
green.
mint milkshake?
Yeah.
Come a Kendall mint drum. Yeah.
Hey, look, lads, I'll stick to me banner brief.
Yeah. Well, you could stick your bloody banana bread. You know what? Banana bread
Absolutely.
is so
Good
difficult
brick.
to make because people get it so wrong, right? They either have it too moist or they have it too dry, or they
Oh,
my
that'd be
God,
horrible.
an
Yeah.
absolute nightmare.
Not a taste, lad.
Yeah, bag gum. It's a bloody Welsh tradition. Right, questions. Anyone got any questions on the first half? Emma, David,
No.
No.
Margaret, Andy.
But
Yeah,
has,
I was a bit sort of confused that there's so many holes in the ground. I thought if you're going out of there late at night, having had a few,
I was
You've got
thinking,
break all your ankles, aren't you?
I was going to say the same. There's more pits than there's
Stupid
places to walk. I presume they
covered up with
They were covered.
did they
It's an
cover them
answer to
with
a minefield.
stone? Were they covered with stone?
no,
What?
basically,
just sods.
it's very likely you could translate this in a number of ways. You couldn't just cap it off because the moisture would go under it. So
Yeah.
it's very likely that you had 4 poster structures over the tops of them, right? Or you would just, or you would solidly cap them off with clay so the moisture couldn't get on them. They were lined. So most of these were lined with clay anyway, with sort of baked fired clay. And then there's well, they're not actually all for storing grain, as I basically said. Michelle said when at Christmas time, right? I think just before Christmas, they were basically giving away bucket loads of food in a local co-op for like 5 pence. Apparently, they do it every year. And Michelle came back with all this food, and we said, "Well, what are we going to do with it?" And she said, "Oh, we'll dig a hole in the ground and put sand in there." Right? Well, you can't do that around here simply because it's Wales, right? But what we could have done is put the big huge bucket with loads of sand in it and just chucked all the potatoes, all the rest of it in there. So that's how you do it. So lots of these pits may have been filled with sand or chip-ins to actually keep the veg fresh.
Looks like Grimes graves.
There'd be a bit left to see, wouldn't there?
So do you think they lost them and they had to keep digging new ones? That's why there's so many.
What, a bit like squirrels?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That links in with the pixies. You know, not the pixies, the little green things from Ireland. And
Leprechauns.
it's like, do you want some gold? Well, go away and get a shovel, and it's the one over there. And the next minute, you've got 500 holes across there. And
Yes.
you've got to dig them all up. Yeah, that's the one. The Irish weren't stupid, were they? It's just like
No.
they would get gullible people like you and me, Andy,
Yeah.
and they would get us to dig the field.
Absolutely.
Or you win it.
Right, Janice, anything you want to say, or Judith,
Nope.
before we have a break?
Go and have a
Yep.
drink. Yep.
Right. And anything from you, Rog?
What?
What? Yeah, exactly. Right.
No,
I asked about
I,
Carleon.
so what?
What do you
about
call it?
Cillian?
Cullion. What do you
Cullion.
how do you
Cillian.
pronounce
Yeah,
it?
Liam.
Cullion, yeah. That's widely regarded as being Camelot now, isn't it?
Oh,
Well, it can't be because Sir Mortimer Wheeler destroyed all the archaeological evidence.
Okay. When were you
You know
planning?
what
When were you planning on having a trip there?
You're not allowed to go.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, that's nice.
Oh yeah, you Judith will have to stay with Emma's dad.
He's got a spare room as well.
Oh,
Oh, Judith, your husband won't be happy.
could somebody up, you know?
It might be. You never know.
well,
Why
Emma's
would
in-
those-
if you just-
Why were
Emma's invited me to stay with
why
them.
were those skeletal heads so white? Those heads, those skulls, why were they so white?
Oh, don't get racist now. They were basically the ossification of the bones themselves. The bone as they age, they start to slightly mineralize, right? And they start to get a bit more solid, and so the ossification. But in lots of different countries, that it there's a key reason why they're white, right? Because of the chalk. Because if you go to, say, Cyprus, the skulls are going to be like yellow because of the sandstone there, which is like a yellow tinge to it. In other areas of the world, you're going to get skulls that are going to be a bit more grey. So, you know, it really depends what soil these are in.
The answer lies in the soil.
The ones
Arr!
the ones we get out the bay are black.
Are they?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's right. And because when they were digging out some of the old river channels in London, right? For example, this is a really interesting one.
Yeah, those heads. Yeah.
Yeah, basically what they would find is the heads that they would find in old water courses that were operating in the Roman period. They would come out with the skulls that were black. And immediately they would say that these skulls are black because they had been burned due to the Boudicca uprising in Londinium in AD 61. But some of them were turned out to be of a later date. Basically, it's the contamination, as Andy said, of
the water.
of the mud changing the skulls black. And one last thing, the mud lacquers, when they're in London and then the riverbanks, right, all the copper that they're in all the muds on a riverbank in London look like gold. Look, you have got, my God, you've got a golden pin. Oh my God, it's all gold. Right, simply because the acid is bringing out the a golden hue of the copper. Not the green hue, but the golden hue of the copper on all, basically any bronze, any brass, any objects that come out of the River Thames look gold.
It's the same on the estuary. I found a brass rivet, which I thought it was bronze because it came out gold, and then I realized, sorry, a copper rivet. It's just a copper, but it was almost golden colored. It was really strange.
Yeah. That's the point. That's the point. So, folks, I've got to be very harsh tonight. We're going to try and be finished about 9:15. So we're going to have a 10-minute break. Now go off.
Tiffin time.
He's already drunk in his tea. Now just go off and have a 10-minute break. Leave me alone. Leave me alone.
Tiffin time.
Tiffin time. Tiffin time.
Tiffin.
What a tiffin do?
Tiffin.
I'm gonna go and get some tea. No, not it's a break. 10-minute break.
She looked like my type. That means I can have a cigarette.
No, my freaking child. I leave it. I think they all heard that. Yep.
You look a bit ghoulish, Andy, with that light.
Sorry, I was just in the middle of writing an email. just checking up on my mail. So.
The green light looked a bit Great.
Oh, it's annoying. I don't know why it does it. Why is it there? It's just that's like the volume control on my headset, and it just flashes a green flashing light all the blinking time. I have to stick some tape over it or something. It's of no use whatsoever.
Yes, some point little lad dreamed it up as a feature.
Yeah.
They seem to be sitting all the time, different this and that and the other. Just would think.
I know. I'll put a green flashing light on it. That'll annoy everybody. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that'll get them going. Make my day.
Yeah.
Yes. Still there we are. Slow. What's the weather like up there in Arnside?
Right. It was nice and sunny. Yeah.
Quite cold as well.
Yeah, a little bit. The wind's a little bit chilly, but yeah.
Yes, it's chilly here. Spoiled it. Not time for my bikini yet.
No, no, not quite. No.
Oh no. Oh.
And have you got a mankini?
Well, yes, I could describe it, but we don't want too much detail. Macho. Do you have a bikini, Margaret?
I do not.
You don't?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, neither do I.
No. Oh, good.
I think I would frighten the seagulls if I ventured out in a bikini.
Well, hey, that'd stop them pinching your chips, though, wouldn't it?
Nah,
Not the
nothing
seagulls you got to worry about.
No, you're probably right. Nothing would.
Why is it that crabs like Norfolk?
Oh, I don't know.
You know, it's kind of famed round Cromer,
Yeah,
especially for crabs.
It's a bit flat down there.
What is it about? I guess every part of Britain attracts different kinds of fish and creatures, doesn't it?
It does. You get a lot of crabs in Cornwall as well. So.
Do you?
Yeah.
And you get sharks in Cornwall.
Get sharks everywhere, but yeah.
Yeah. Just basking sharks.
No, all sorts.
Did you see that fella that was swallowed in his kayak, and he was swallowed by a
whale? Yeah.
And then it
big one, isn't it?
Yeah.
It swallowed him, and then it chucked him out again.
Yes, understandably. Hard to chew.
Him and his kayak, the whole lot.
Yeah, it just came up underneath him, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a big one. I can't the whale. The huge animals. God.
Yeah.
Well, it must have just been going along with its mouth open.
They swim round in a circle, blowing bubbles out. Yeah, they swim round in a circle, blowing bubbles out to get the fish into a ball, and then they come up with their mouths wide open.
Yeah.
To get them, well, not the fish, whatever the krill or whatever it is they eat, but
krill.
Yeah. And he just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, that was it. Because perhaps sometimes swimmers out there might be mistaken for seals. I know he was in a boat.
Yeah.
Sometimes others.
Well, sharks, one of the way they test things is by giving it a bite to see what it is. And of course, obviously, if it's your leg, that's not very good for you. But they think, oh, don't like that, and spit it out. But it's too late then.
You haven't changed your socks, so forget it.
What have you seen out in the bay, Andy, that's unusual?
Well, I don't know what about unusual. I mean, there's a fin whale.
A whale
is buried on the other side of the estuary. It came up on one of the tides. That's about 25 foot long, something like that. Quite a big one, but they usually don't come into tidal waters, big stuff like that usually. No. So, but we have harbour porpoises, but they're not so unusual because they live in the bay now. So
yeah.
But they're only little 4-foot things.
What's the difference between a porpoise and a dolphin?
Not a lot. They're just different shapes. You get bigger. The dolphins tend to be bigger.
Yeah. You know, when the astronauts, do they call them astronauts? The ones that were trapped up in space for ages.
Yeah.
When they came down, it showed all the dolphins surrounding them.
That was funny.
Wasn't that lovely?
Yeah.
They probably thought it was a free meal.
Well, they play along, didn't they? But on boats, when we're around,
they do.
Have a grand time.
Yeah.
They don't seem to attack. Something.
No, I've not come across them attacking people at all.
No, they seem to like us, don't they?
Playful, yeah.
Yeah.
We're not attacking them, so you think, oh well, yeah. I don't know, Japan, they probably do attack everything.
There was a pod of young ones that were attacking sailing boats off Spain last summer.
Dolphins
Yeah.
were there.
Hooligans.
It was the boat. I don't think it was the
Yeah,
people. It was
yeah,
the
you
boat
get that.
they didn't like.
You get that with the killer whales as well. They attack boats, but there's very, very few recordings of them actually attacking people.
Mm.
And they're a dolphin as well,
Mm.
not a whale.
Mm.
So I don't know why they ended up getting called a whale. Because they're big, and you're not going to argue with them.
Is a shark a fish or a mammal?
It's a fish.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think it's a fish, is it?
We were doing a quiz the other night, and we had to name a fish beginning with S. And I said a shark, and they said no, it's a mammal.
Salmon.
No, it's a fish.
Fish, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
And some of them actually do give birth to live babies as well. They are all the shark family are all fish.
They're fish.
We have a thing called royal fish, which part of the Coast Guard thing that if we find any, we have to record them and inform the authorities of. And they are whales, dolphins, porpoises, and sturgeon, of which only one of those is actually a fish. But we can't say that because it's the king. So, and who are we to argue?
The big question is, if we're classifying people and organisms, is Claire classed as a woman or a goddess?
Oh, probably a goddess, Carl, actually. Yeah.
She is amazing. What that woman does is quite amazing. She's done everything, isn't she?
Yeah. She has done a lot. Yeah.
She has.
So officially, we have decided that Claire is a goddess. That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Right. Do you prefer the hat this way? Is it like better?
No.
It's terrible anyway.
You look like a dog. You look like a dog.
Like a bullfighter gone wrong.
A spaniel.
One of my latest roles is to play a former death camp commandant just before my trial and execution. I'm really getting into that.
Oh, Lord.
That's really destroyed the scene now, haven't it? It's the way of bringing the sort of essence down. Right.
Well, it's too much on World War stuff, literally on TV. With the SF. It should stop.
Right. So here we go. So I'm thinking that what I want to do is I want to wind up Hill Forts next week. Totally. I want to no more Hill Forts, but there's a few things I want to do. So the only way I'm going to do that is to really crack on with this now. So let me get my notes. So I want us to look at the temple side of things. One thing that we've not actually covered really at all with our Iron Age discussions. I'm going to make sure I can do this now. Yeah, I can do this. I've got enough time. So let's just look at that. It looks great, doesn't it? Gives you really picturesque. And remember the mud angle with these sites. Just think that obviously if you're living in these places, you've got to start thinking about what the conditions are going to be like in the winter months. And you're somebody who lives amongst mud and sheep and chickens, and it's all churned up. So it's these places are going to be really unpleasant in the winter months, and that's probably one reason why eventually hill forts are going to be abandoned, and with changes in environmental conditions by around AD 100, where things are getting a little bit cooler and damper in the winter months, that these places are just really not going to be nice places at all. Anyway, back to Barry Cunliffe, back to Danebury Rings and the site, which we've been doing. In the centre of Danebury Rings, we've already established that there is a group of 4 rather unusual rectangular buildings. Now, I'm not going to make the statement, it's obvious that rectangular buildings in the Iron Age are special buildings, because there are lots of rectangular buildings that are used for habitation in the Iron Age. But that's basically more on the continent. In Britain, we've got still lots of circular buildings, a mixture of square, rectangular, oblong, and so on, trapezoidal as well. So basically, with these buildings that we're finding in the middle of the site as excavated, they face towards the entrance of the hill fort, and are sited on what's referred to as the false summit of the hill. Sort of, that is the area that appears to be the skyline when viewed from the entrance, but is in fact not the true crest. So in other words, it's a way of seeing these from a certain perspective, a bit like art, the artists do, when it's that sort of perspective of the art, the way of seeing. So these are meant to be seen from a certain angle. They're also aligned with the pathway running directly towards the main road and the east entrance. So one of the buildings lies astride the path and seems to have been some kind of fenced enclosure, quite possibly unroofed. So in other words, that thing going down the middle is the path, and it's smack bang in the middle. Now, the point is with all of this, right? And it's saying main road, and it's talking about this sort of, remember, lots of the huts are on the outside just on the inside of the banking of this site, right? Lots of these are pits. Now, what we can say is all that can safely be said about these buildings is that they're built in stages. They're various different stages and phases where these structures are actually built. So what we've got is that they're given all different numbers. And RS2 is one that we're going to actually put on the screen. That says RS2. So it's basically along the path, RS2. And you've got all these pits and sort of, there's 5 of these temple-like structures on here. So what we've got with RS2 is this has been really thoroughly excavated, and what you've got, it's built above former pits. Okay, so what you've got this, the main thing for the building is in fact that's the building. And that's the entranceway. And what you've got around it is former archaeology. It's built upon various pits and things that had already existed there. So that's really interesting. It's a temple built within the existing archaeology. Remember as well that when these buildings are being built, the structures that they occupy have been there for 200, 300, 400 years. So that's history at that point in time. But obviously they're not going to know that's there. And Andy said, that point that Andy said earlier on, we've dug a pit over there, put grain in it, we sort of sealed it, we don't know where it is, right? Yeah, there's pits everywhere. And actually, that's a really good point, Andy. I wonder if there's any sort of evidence where people have sealed up grain in a pit in the ground and basically forgotten it was there. That must have happened. If you've got a year of plenty and you've got so much grain, it's possible. So what you've got the path is really important there, right? Since all of these could be said that they're related in some way, and they're related in some way. Are they related to the pits? What's going on? Can we date these buildings by looking at the pottery? Because what we've got with the archaeology is staining in the ground. So it's within the staining in the ground, the sort of walls of the structure, right? The slots in the ground that may have actually been paneled buildings of some description. Basically, you might have a big tree trunk in the foundations there, and the rest of the frame of the building's constructed. So what we've got is that these are interesting, to say the least. And when we say interesting, to say the least, is that the first stage of the archaeological excavation entailed the very careful clearing of the surface of the filling of the wall trench, which had been cut into the chalk. So there you go, they're wall trenches there. The dark sort of grey is the wall trenches. And what we've got is very distinct layers. And what they have got is that as you've got these beautiful images, you've got really good preservation. And the filling within those trenches, right, you get an idea of dating, right, and you get an idea of information. So what you've got in them, as they've excavated, the timbers had rotted away, and left the void, and then that's been backfilled at a later time. When, we don't know. If this interpretation is correct, then we must imagine buildings with solid plank walls and presumably simple gabled roofs of reeds or thatch. So when we mean by planked walls, quite simple. You'd have a timber in the trench, right? And you may actually have a supporting timber going up, and there's planks added on the outside, a simple plank wall, right? And this would then support the roof. Very simple structure, very poor illustration that I drew then, but very simple structure. And it's likely that this was gabled, yeah, as gabled with a normal house, triangular form. As another one of my really bad images, one of my bad drawings, where you're going to get a building, right, and it's going to be gabled like that down there. So this is the type of building that we're talking about, right? Typical gable structure. Square, it's look very sort of interesting, you know, to have these structures standing out across the landscape. Whether 3 or 4 or 5 of these buildings stood at all one time is unlikely. Maybe one at a time throughout the period, but it's likely that the roofs were would have been reeded or a thatched roof. So, do we think that these are just the likes of temples? Where is the evidence that these are temples? They're very special buildings. Nevertheless, they're special buildings in the center of the site. How do we know that they're temples? How do we know that the functions offer the archaeological evidence to tell that they're temples? We don't get little statues and things in them, which you might associate with sort of Roman temples. So there is nothing associated with these Danebury buildings that truly indicate what they are, but they're very special in the sense they're in the middle of the site, and it's also indicated that they're in the middle of all these pits, and lots of these pits have been filled with animal and human remains. So what we have done is we've compared these with Roman structures to actually dominate the landscape in future generations. In the Roman period, hundreds of years later, for example, at Maiden Castle, and they actually found buildings of this type when they were developing at Heath Row. But again, it's interesting. It's an interesting hypothesis to think that these are actually temples that have actually been constructed in the heart of Danebury. And what you can actually see there, you can actually see the orientation, another little bit of a plan. So what the archaeologists have done, this is the plan with all the fill in it, with all the sort of stuff that's been eventually deposited in the trench. that would have supported then the plank wall in. So there we go. They're not very deep, but you can imagine if you put a plank in here, a big hefty timber, right, and then you constructed the building associated with Danebury. And actually, I do believe we got a reconstructed drawing of this. So if I can, I haven't actually got it on here, but if we actually go back online with Baldrick's actually going to get us online now. We're going to get on Google, right? And if we type in, Baldrick's very useful. You know, he gets very upset if I don't kiss him and cuddle him every night, right?
Oh, dear.
Yeah, and also baby Baldrick also gets cuddles, but she's a bit different. She doesn't have she gets a little bit upset if I sing to her too much. But anyway, I'm going to see if I can find a reconstruction. We showed you a reconstruction of these buildings last week. There. Now, we showed you this last week. Now, these might be these. I said I would go back to this and show you this from last week, but this is the reconstruction drawing of what these buildings may have looked like in the centre of Danebury. They might be a little bit larger than could be presented on site. For example, the biggest of these buildings is no more possible than about 8 meters in length, and maybe the perspective's a bit wrong there. I'm not sure really. However, we've got a little bit of a plan of what these buildings look like in a moment. And one interesting thing is you've got a totem pole. We've got lots of evidence in Britain to say that our ancestors had totem poles. When you used to watch our films, you know, the 1950s and 60s with cowboys and Indians, obviously you call them Indians is completely wrong. And you used to have totem poles, and all the actors in those films were actually played by white Americans and not Native Americans, which was quite really insulting at the time. But what we used to see is totem poles in those films about cowboys and Indians from the 50s and 60s. And totems are something that we find in lots of cultures. Carved timbers, which had they were painted. They may have had various inscriptions on them, various carvings of animals. And there's one interesting thing. Roger will know this. Up near Maddie, in the South Wales valleys. Archaeologists were excavating. I think this date's right. They found timbers that are over 5,000 years old, big long timbers that had sort of chevrons on them that we interpret them as being totem poles, right? So some of those posts at Danebury are actually some of those those holes in the ground are for totem poles, right? So what we're going to do now, we're going to go off. I'm going to go to Baldrick, and we're going to see if we can find my images. Baldrick, can you find me my images, please, Baldrick? Baldrick, where's my images? Come on, Baldrick, please let me find my images. Right, here we go. If we go there, hang on a minute. You know, we should. Michelle's agreed that when we come to Cumbria, we can bring in Baldrick with us.
Yeah.
She's in the room. She's not happy with that suggestion. So there we go.
No.
So this is what we've got, and this the ones that say RS1 and RS2 and RS3 and 4. Those are the ones excavated that we find in the middle of Danebury. You can see that the three on the right are quite small, but also the one at Heathrow is pretty big, and they've a Cadbury Castle, which is also very similar in dimensions to Danebury Castle. That's there as well. And you've got the Lancing site where you've got evidence of these temple structures. So they're not just found at this one locality, right? But you do find them at other sites. So it's really interesting hypothesis, because when they've excavated the one clear thing that these are actually temples is that there's no hearths in the middle of them. They're not used for people to live in, right? It's not sort of indicative of animals being in there. So if they're not storing animals in there, if they're not big enough to store hay in them, and there's no hearths in them, and there is the best likelihood is that they were probably temples, right? Or what they would associate with being temples. So what I want us to do now, if we don't get all of Danebury finished today, what I would like to do, I would really like to shut up, Rod. I would really like. I am told him to shut up enough tonight. It's a shame, really.
Well,
Roger, I got to be honest with you. I'm not going to say anything disparaging about you tonight, which I am. None of us missed you earlier on when you didn't come on.
I was getting trouble with the updates.
Any excuse, Rod. Roger,
Well,
these classes,
man's got to do what man's got to do.
these classes would and wouldn't be the same without you. So, Iron Age Brits mutilated and killed 25 victims and stuffed them into burial pits as grisly sacrifice. Right. So I think this is sort of based on some of the work of Barry Cunliffe, but this is a little bit more specific. So there we go. Look at that body there. Oh, doesn't that look great? Loving it. That image is so clear. So this is taking the research at Danebury a little bit further. And I'm just going to read this out. So 25 bodies found in an Iron Age pit in Hampshire were victims of violent ritual sacrifice. Obviously, that's what archaeologists say. And this is 2019. According to archaeologists, most of the prehistoric Brits who died around 2,000 years ago were young men who were tied up and mutilated before they were tossed into the mass grave. So we really haven't talked about this. There they go. They've just been tossed in there. They're tossed in there. They have. Some were perfectly healthy before they were killed, while others showed signs of disease and disability. The pit at the Danebury Iron Age hill fort near Winchester was discovered in the 1970s, right? So we've talked a little bit about this, but not really to this detail. Excavation are ongoing, and experts who worked on the site explored the victims' brutal final moments in the new documentary. So basically, there's new work. They've had new work since the wonderful Sir Barry Cunliffe. We found a bath-shaped pit that was rather unusual. And there's another one. There you go. And basically this itself was part of an episode which you could probably find on the Smithsonian channel or on YouTube called Mystic Britain. And there we go, another one of the skeletons. And the image that we've already seen is this one. We've seen this earlier on, and I basically was a bit I didn't really go into this because I wanted to talk about this at the end. So most of the victims who died 2,000 years ago were young men who were tied up, mutilated, and killed before they were lobbed into the mass grave. Right in the center, what they found right in the center was a human pelvis by itself. Other bones belonging to the body, such as the victim's femurs, were found scattered across the grave. They chopped the legs off at the top of the femurs and then smashed through the middle of the body through the soft part. They took the pelvis area out of the body and placed it at the bottom of the pit. Now, I'm not sure they did this with all. I'm not sure that they did this with all 25 sets of human remains, but what we do have is this. Professor Sir Barry Cunliffe, an archaeologist at the University of Oxford, spoke to an anthropologist, and this is where they're going. They're talking about something that we've indicated tonight, but something very, very different. Those are the pelvic bones. There, two of the pelvic bones. Marks on the bones suggest the attackers didn't neatly carve the body in two, but hacked it into pieces. One can only hope they killed this specific individual out of the 25, and they've all got signs of this type of thing. They were chopped up. So the Danebury fort, as we know, covers an area of just over 5 hectares. As Barry Cunliffe says, was occupied over 5 centuries. The inhabitants of Danebury lived during a violent time in Britain, in which the country was ruled by tribes led by warrior kings. Do I believe that? No, right? But Danebury was specifically interesting in that it tells a different story than other hill fort sites across Britain. So these bones themselves, and they're basically again talking about what we've discussed tonight, about the bodies, these particular 25, and obviously out of the 300, the pit where the bodies were found was used to store seed grain for each year's harvest, and that might indicate that they may have had a new pit every single year to keep the grain, or a number of pits if the harvest was very, very high that year. So Danebury's clan leaders, if you want to go there, would offer sacrifices to these gods to thank them if the grain was fresh and fertile when they retrieved it each spring. The 25 bodies found at the fort were not all sacrificed at once, but over multiple harvests. Now that's an interesting thing. In this just one pit, they've all been slung in there. They've been cut to bits. Are these people who died natural deaths, or were they people from other clans, or were they people who volunteered for the purpose of being placed into these pits? We're really, really not sure. Just a few facts. Again, this from this article. We know that the Iron Age lasted from roughly 800 or 750 years BC to 43 AD. It followed the Bronze Age and marked the time in which ancient Brits began to make tools and weapons out of iron. This is a bit of a recap, actually. Little is known about the Iron Age in Britain, but we're really starting to learn a lot more. We know about the iron tools, the farming. We know about settlement growing. We've talked a lot about that. Were there frequently deadly battles between tribes? I'm saying no, but at Danebury there's something really, really interesting going on, and we've sort of been a bit vague tonight, but it sort of gives us an idea. And when we do look at this world, and the abandonment of Danebury, for example, we don't really know the reasons why that is, and over the past few weeks we've been talking about maybe one of the reasons why Danebury was abandoned was due to the fact that there was some kind of disease. We don't know. So moving on from the sacrificial stuff to sort of bring this to an end tonight, so leading on to next week more than anything, just by saying that this hill fort at Danebury and lots of these hill forts dominate the landscape. They have commanding views over the rest of the landscape. Usually these types of sites like Danebury, lots of these 5,000 hill forts, were in the middle of landscapes with rich agricultural soil, right, which is easily cultivated. Like you want to go to the likes of Maiden Castle is exactly the same. And just go back to those questions that we always ask. Lots of these hill forts are varying different sizes, right? You might have one community that's got 150 people, they build their own hill fort. You've got somewhere like Danebury, you've got 300, 400, 500 people building this site. Maiden Castle, you might have 1,000 people within the landscape, different sizes, right? But there's generally 5 hectares is a good size for a hill fort across Britain, it really is. And this thing that we keep mentioning, there is some debate whether hill forts were purely defensive structures, and to what extent they were occupied. If you've got the gateways removed at Danebury, was it defensive? Was it for displaying wealth and power or influence across the rest of the landscape? The temple buildings at this site are really, really interesting. That maybe that's displaying something else. And so in conclusion today, and leading us on to next week, and that'll be the end of our Iron Age hill fort stuff. Surrounding Danebury hill fort are many smaller farmsteads. This is good good place to stop, actually. And these farmsteads occupy areas of like 2.5 acres, which is 1 hectare. And a farmstead with 1 hectare, and maybe there might be some kind of division, but there's no ditches and banks around these things. You know, maybe a wicker fence or something. So the fort itself, Danebury, in this instance, or many instances with these hill forts, was supplied with grain from the surrounding farmsteads and could hold 20 times more food than the average farmstead. And obviously it's higher up, and that means that there's better drainage for the food, which is stored in these chalk silos in the ground. Danebury itself was the hub of this farming landscape. It was in the middle. It was in a central place where people could gather to trade and store and just chat on a Wednesday afternoon. Periods of intensified activity in hill forts such as Danebury, coinciding with depopulation of the surrounding landscape, could indicate the increasing importance of hill forts in society. What that exactly means, depopulation or increase in population, who knows? There would have been times of unrest. And at Danebury, we've got signs of some violence. And maybe Danebury was in the part of the world that there were a lot more people living than other parts of Britain. And therefore, there were times of warfare, there were times of violence. But Danebury continued. And the landscape of Danebury continued after Danebury, the hill fort, was abandoned. When Danebury, the hill fort, became the home for one single family of 10, 15 people, when it had been the home beyond 100 years BC of 300 people, which was a sizable location to be living in Iron Age Britain. On that note, what we're going to do, I'm just going to do a little bit of a roll of images. I'll tell you what that Danebury meteorite is next week. I didn't do that this week. Again, obviously, we got an idea of the ditch. We got the entranceway. There's another aerial view. We've mentioned about the Iron Ages and sort of getting this landscape. And we've mentioned more of the victims were young men who were tied up, mutilated, and killed before they were lobbed into the mass grave. So this mass grave in the center of the site, you know, every year you've got a grain silo. Let me make that clear. A grain silo like over there. You've got half a dozen grain silos for that year's grain, right? And maybe if you ain't able to fill those silos, you may need to make a sacrifice. We don't know. There's no sure thing that these people were actually killed to be sacrificed. In some cases, they maybe were, but maybe people were generally dead, and then the dead body sacrificed. To sacrifice a body which is already dead is equally as powerful as sacrificing a body that's alive. Memories, again, this wonderful set of skeletal remains, and again, this one huddled up, sort of pushed in there, and again. I think this is more referring to these are the 25. Maybe some of them were bundled up like that, but that's one that's been placed in there as part of a normal sort of burial in a pit, and that's not a very deep pit at all. So again, the temples, remember the temples, we hadn't really done temples, and these massive silos, huge things. And again, the locality and these pits. And again, image of warfare, if you want to go with that, these pits. The pits of skull, another one of these bodies, more pits, Danebury, and remember, load of envelopes. Danebury, remember this when you watch the Detectorists again, the Danebury Metal Detecting Club, but they never have this in the series. I don't know why. Probably because they would need permission to actually film here, and that's life. So here we go. That's it tonight. So. We've all got little jobs to do, so let's see if there's any questions. I tell you what, let's see if there's anything from David number 1.
Am I?
Who was number 1?
Oh,
Yeah, David number 1 came before you. David number 2 is David number 1. David Rogers.
No, thank you.
I'm full of.
Good night, all.
Bye, Dave.
Hi, Dave. See you next
Bye.
week.
Right,
Thank
Dave.
you for joining us.
Right.
I look forward to seeing David. I do. It'd be great to see him.
I've been here the whole time. It's very interesting.
Exactly.
Really good.
Thank you. Anyway,
Thank
night, David. Right,
Right.
I tell you what. We'll do Margaret next, and we'll do David and.
Well,
and
call
Emma.
me Richard, and then I'll know who I am, like you did
Exactly.
when you got it wrong.
Right, Margaret. Anything from you?
You're not going to like this,
Hello.
Oh,
but when I hear about sacrifices and temples, I'm thinking druids.
No.
Right, okay. The idea of druids is a context which comes in a lot later, and we're not even going to do that. So don't ever mention druids again.
I know.
Tacitus mentions druids once in a British context, and that's the only mention we got of druids in the whole of our history when we mention druids.
Might be though. Could be.
The idea of druids was invented by the antiquarians in the 1700s, and let's not do that today. No, right. Anything else, Margaret?
I don't suppose they know where these young men were from. Were they from that area?
I think they were warriors.
That's not a question that I can answer. That'd be really, really interesting. Now, if they were, if the best way to, if you look at one of the bodies in one of the pits that's been put in there lovingly, if that person's related to one of the ones put into the big pit with the 25 in, right, then that answers your question. And it tells us another story. And if somebody may have been disabled, they may have wanted to give their lives up because they're in a lot of pain, and therefore they're in a way sacrificed, a bit like bog bodies.
Yeah, the archaeologists keep calling it sacrifices rather than a battle, don't they?
Yeah.
Because we can't, because archaeologists come up with the word sacrifice and ritual because we can't answer the question.
Okay.
Right. Okay then. Janice, don't forget your shekels. Make sure you send them over. Anything, Janice?
No, I haven't got any questions.
All right then. And Janice, it's great to have you tonight. This is going to be the second time, and that's good. I'm glad you come back. But don't forget, we usually start at 7. But yeah, that's a. Yeah,
oh right, sorry, I thought it was 7:30. That's why I was late.
It's Roger's fault.
Yes, I know.
Roger's
Put it on my head, Janet.
It's always Roger's fault.
That's why I'm here.
Me and Roger are going to have a row in a minute, deliberately. Let's see if Richard and Emma's got anything to say.
Oh, as you wish.
Emma.
As you. No.
No. Okay.
Digging me in the ribs, so I can't speak. Every time.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna say I was on set once. I was on set today, right, for a production I can't talk about,
Sure.
and it was like I turned up with these really family like boots on, right, and they dressed me in all these brand new clothes that I don't know where they got them from. I thought, oh my god, these jeans were really good, and I had a Barber jacket and everything, and it was really good. And they said, oh, you can wear them because those shoes make you look like a farmer. And I said, that's because I am a farmer.
Oh, typecasting.
Oh, do you know what? I turned up and I thought, there I am in a certain big film that's coming out in the summer, right? We won't mention a third film in the series. I just thought,
Gladiator 3.
I wonder what that is.
I didn't.
That's not a clue. Come on.
Andy, shut up.
Sorry.
Right, I'm going now, Carl.
Yeah. Oh God, shut up. Right, Roger, go on, talk to me. I've had enough of these clowns. Go on, Roger.
Well, mind you do very well, Carl, and I'm going now, so there'll be peace.
Oh
You
no,
feel a
Daddy.
happy man.
Dad.
What?
Bye, Rog.
Bye,
See you next week.
No,
yes,
Rog, don't do anything that I would do.
Not that bad. Right. Okay then. See you.
Bye.
Oh, by the way, Roger's coming in my car when we have a trip to Killeen.
Oh, not again.
With the
You know what?
Far away.
I'm going to deliberately have tyres in the back of the car.
Oh, That's it.
Do you know, the situation was that I thought one of my tyres was going to go, right? So I had all these people in my car and I was saying, they said, why have you got a tyre in the back of the car? I'm just saying, just in case I need to change the tyre because I think it's going to go. So we're pounding along the motorway at 60 miles an hour.
Did they blow you up? Yeah.
Anyway, oh God, we got rid of him. Right.
All right. I've enjoyed
we'll
the
have Judith
evening.
next.
Oh, just a quickie.
Yeah, Rich. Judith.
Thanks. I can call me Rick.
Judith.
Yeah, sorry. Just thinking about young men. You know how they can be a bit.
Really? Oh.
Yeah. No, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do know what you mean.
Oh God!
I'm an old man.
The concept of the violent gang, it can't be a new one, can it? Do you think they might have formed a gang and had like a raiding party and decided they were just going to have an adventure and nick all this grain, and then they got caught and it didn't turn out well for them?
I would go
That
along with
could have
that.
been a trick. That could have been a trick. I'll go with that.
You know what they're like when they get
were
together.
young
Everything's a laugh and they think
other
they're
tribes
nails and they're
making a raid.
Yeah, but looking all butch.
Yeah, just because they're the lads and they decided they were going to be a gang and terrorise the local neighbourhood. I mean, lads do that now, don't they? So could
Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. That's not a real feminist attitude. We should be talking about matriarchal. We should be talking about why can't women do this?
Yeah, well, sometimes that's why. There was young men that were killed, weren't they? So I'm presuming that they got caught doing something.
Maybe they didn't do it, and that so they got killed for not doing it.
Well, maybe, or maybe if society becomes too matriarchal, young men decide I'm not being told what to do.
Or maybe they just didn't want any men. We don't need men. Get rid of them.
Maybe, maybe that, yeah.
Nobody said that, did they? This is supposed to be a matriarchal society, so men are dispensable.
Yeah,
they're used for one purpose.
Yep.
Ah, maybe that then. But I also know when I've got a house full of men, haven't I? So when you know what I mean, when they decide that we're going to get really testosterone and face up to each other and have a big fight.
Are you not in control, Judith?
God, what do you think? No.
Flipping heck.
I can't handle this conversation. Right, okay.
They have women warriors as well.
There were.
Yeah, exactly.
There were.
This is what we're worried about.
What I'm trying to say is it wasn't women that were cut into pieces and thrown in a pit. It was young men.
For whatever.
It could have been a young man thing that got them into trouble and got them killed.
It could have been. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God.
Yeah, we're getting into rape and pillage now.
I don't know.
By outside tribes.
They might have just nicked a pig.
Yeah, exactly. Pig
they might just decided they were.
Okay then.
I can't handle this anymore. Right, Andy.
Barry Cunliffe. I can't remember when you said, or if you said when he actually did his excavation and stuff.
Oh yeah, Barry Cunliffe was excavating there from 1969 every single season until 1988.
Okay, right. Well, that's pre all the modern kind of DNA and molecular analysis and isotope analysis, isn't it? So there's a lot more information can be had from those remains now that will shed a light on who they were and what they might have been. And I kind of wondered how they'd managed to get all that information together about how they were dealt with, because they could have been, there's as they say, there's many ways to skin a cat, and it would still look the same, wouldn't it? So, so I was a bit dubious about that. Also, the plan. That lovely plan drawing you've got shows a really lovely chronology of events through it,
Yes.
So it's like, clearly that main pathway was not used when they built those so-called temples, which I think they probably are. It makes logical sense.
Yeah.
On top of it, it was just and that also shows, and that taking that, like not having a gate. I mean, that really does question the kind of defensive security of the place, doesn't it? And the use of therefore. So,
maybe it was like one of those Carry On films. Like, right, look, guys, right, you've got to attack over there because you don't want to attack here because there's no gateway, right? Just go with ease Yeah, just go with that one over there, right? We can have a real fight. Yeah, right, boys. Yeah, that's
all right. Don't go there. It's a double bluff. It's too easy. Yeah.
And the women are all stood there thinking, what an absolute bunch of idiots. And they're just thinking, why do we have to put up with this from those men? Just let them fight and there's less of them. Job done.
It's a really strange. It just, the more we do, the more we've done hill forts, the more questionable it is as to what the
less we know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Love it. Thank you. Love hill forts. They're such an enigma.
Yeah.
So we're going to do more hill forts next week, and that'll be the end of hill forts because I got to move towards the Roman period soon, and
right.
Even though I'm a Roman archaeologist, I absolutely hate teaching it because
you look very good for that age. Yeah.
What? I don't know. Oh, by the way, I've got a
2,000-year-old archaeologist. You look good.
I got to look like this for another week now.
That's fine. It's fine. Look, you look rugged.
I thought you were going to say rubbish.
No, I wouldn't say that. That would be rude. Margaret, you'll end up on the naughty bench. You're already in a corner.
Yeah.
It looks windswept and interesting.
No.
Yeah, look at that. I just get
backwards.
I'll have a thingy and I'll just put 2 of those sweetener things in it.
Very eminent.
Do you know what? When I'm on film set, right, there's a full selection of all, and I've got sugar. Here, there's no sugar.
It's bad for you.
All right.
That's true. God. Oh, it was so good touching a Dalek today.
Oh, proper stuff.
I
wish I'd been able to buy one. You know, when they sold them all off ages ago, the original ones, I would have loved to have bought one.
Yeah, they did. They sold everything off, and it was just like, right, okay, and it's typical BBC, and there's still whole episodes of Doctor Who, that we don't know where they are. They just deleted it all.
A couple turned up, didn't they? Was it last year or the year before that they found somewhere
in Australia and stuff? They do turn up. And the thing is, from a filming point of view, we're from the production company side of things, Wildfire Company Productions. When we're filming, the amount of memory that our digital stuff takes up, we're having to delete stuff ourselves.
Yeah, it's massive. Absolutely massive.
Is it still the original TARDIS?
No, the TARDIS has been updated about. There's a different design of a TARDIS slightly for every single Doctor, more or less.
Oh, okay.
There's a slightly, I don't think in the earlier ones, but the TARDIS has slightly changed each time. There's a different, because the TARDIS is directly linked to the Doctor, so the regeneration. So there's the TARDIS slightly changes.
Who was the original writer of Doctor Who?
Andy.
I'm not quite that old.
I can remember it when I was a child.
Yeah. I don't know who wrote the original. Yeah.
And the original Cybermen were frigging frightening.
They were.
I used to find it very, very scary as a child.
Yeah, they
were meant to.
It was nearly as scary as Ina Sharples in Coronation Street.
Oh, I don't know.
No, I don't know. And what we're also doing, we're refilming the Twilight Zone series, not the 1980s ones, but the 1950s ones, right?
Oh, that'd be good.
And we've worked out we can have 12 actors in every single episode.
Right.
So we've got 2 of the actors who've
Cheap
already
production.
Yeah, every single episode that you're in of the Twilight Zone, you get killed off. Every single one, except there will be one. Everyone's going to think, these 2 are going to be killed off this week. These 2 are killed off this week, and suddenly they're not.
Right. Ina Sharples used to come to Arnside regularly.
Twilight series. What?
She used to live next door to just down the road from my school. And every year when it was voting day, she used to arrive in a chauffeur-driven car, and she only lives like 6 houses away. But
she used to come to Arnside a lot. She used to stay here on holiday. Yeah.
Oh, right.
There's pictures of her knocking around somewhere in what was called the Bayview. It's now the bakery, the bakehouse or whatever. We used to call the Bayview Cafe. Pictures of her in there.
She was quite posh, actually.
A bit like you.
Posh but frightening.
Posh but frightening. And Hilda Ogden had a connection to Ambleside. We used to see her in Ambleside.
Little Hilda, yeah.
Little Hilda in a cross.
I liked Hilda Ogden. She was good.
Yeah. They were all wonderful.
And Stan. We like Stan.
Oh, yeah. We wanted, if we were going to have, we had two girls. So for those who don't know, is that we were going to have, if we had a boy, we were going to call him Stanley. One, because my grandfather was called Stanley, but Karen's mum, who was a great Coronation Street, said, "You can't call him Stanley." We're going, "Why not?" Because of Stan Ogden. I'm thinking, well, why would we? We're going to call him after Stan Ogden anyway. There are other Stanleys, you know. I'm not going down the road shouting Stanley.
For the Stanley Baker, the finest actor ever.
Yeah, Stan Baker. Yeah.
You just don't hear of Stanleys anymore. It's died out, isn't it?
There was not this maybe the ones that are about mid-20s now. There's quite a lot of Stans in that.
Are there?
Yeah. Not Stanleys, Stans.
Stan.
Yeah.
Do you know the name that nobody was called last year?
Oh, I heard this somewhere.
Karen.
Really?
Karen.
Yeah.
Karen. There's a reason.
And
well,
Osama.
There is, yeah.
Yeah.
Becky sent you a podcast.
So I don't know where we are now.
Tuesday.
Anyway, Tuesday, right? So
for now,
we've ended up talking about Karen. So
that's because she's not here. She's in London.
Have you ever, guys? Have you ever had this period? Have you ever had periods in your life that you've been dominated with a person with the same name? At one point, all the women I knew were called Sharon, and then it was a phase of Karens, right?
Yeah, we had a phase of Karens. Yeah, because my brother had a girlfriend called Karen as well. I mean, Mum still got the names wrong.
Well,
my wife's called Karen. I'm sorry, for those who don't know. Yes.
My generation, there's an awful lot of Margarets,
and
I guess.
Oh yeah, there's loads of them.
We were named after Princess Margaret, I'm guessing.
Possibly.
They
go around in cycles, don't they? We named Isabel Margaret. So.
Oh, is she? Oh,
really? Yeah, because Karen's mum's a Margaret.
Yeah. But I get called Maggie. Most people call me Maggie.
Maggie.
Yeah.
Right, guys, I'm gonna probably have to call it a day now because tonight I've got to I've still got to do my column for the newspaper. I've got to sort out some video stuff. Oh my God, loads of stuff.
Learn some lines.
God, he does know these things.
You're a man.
Just a wild guess,
but you're a man of many parts, aren't you?
2 arms, 2 legs, and a nose.
Man of many parts. Did you see that, Andy? Did you see that man of many parts? I like that one.
Yeah, man of many parts.
Eminent man of many parts. Carl's the eminent archaeologist. He was billed as it was on something a few years ago, so we've never let him forget that.
That was one of the most bizarrest lectures. Oh, guys, I got to tell you this, right? I got to tell you, there was I decided to base my lecture on Paleolithic southern Cumbria on a guy who had been involved with the History Society, which he set up, but they chucked him out of, right? So I turn up and I'm presenting this lecture about this guy's work, and everyone in his group hates the guy. And they told me at the end.
Yep, that'd be about right. Yeah.
I went through the whole lecture and I thought, oh, this is all right, but they're really not saying anything. And then the guy's no longer with us. Was he called Salisbury?
Yes.
Yeah.
Claire knows him, or knew him, yeah.
Yeah, but Claire would say, Claire was telling me about this guy, and I thought, oh, it'd be good to base a lecture on it, and his work, and oh my God, that was really so embarrassing. And somebody came up to me at the end and said, if I had known you would be doing a whole lecture about the guy, I wouldn't have turned up.
Oh,
That's good. He was a good archaeologist. I think that's a bit that's a bit mean of him. He was the guy that found the human remains in the caves, wasn't he? That put it to 14,000 years ago and upset
Exactly.
the whole time scale for the Ice Age up here, and nobody would believe him until it was cross-referenced with the British Museum, and they said it was. Yeah.
So, guys, I'm going to call it a day.
Okay.
It's been an absolute delight having Janice and Judith and Jane. Janice and Jane. See? Janice, Judith, Andy, Margaret, Richard, David, the Pope, Roger, Emma.
Thank you.
And Roger, do I do Roger? Yeah, David.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Now I know who I am.
hopefully see you all next week. So I'm going to say good night now. So
Yep.
thank you very much for joining us, and it's been great. Thank you. Night, night, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye bye.
Emma.
Bye.
Night, night. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye.
Night. Night. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Oh, hang on.
Oh, night,
Hang on.
folks.
I'm always stuck. Hold on. I'm used to this.
But, Janice is still there.
I can't get it off.
No, I can't get it off either.
Oh God. Night, night, guys.
All right, I'll work it out in a minute.
And keep stalking
Alright.
me, Emma. I'll speak to
There
you
you
soon. Night.
Oh, what? I can't bloody do it. Hold on a second. Got it.
You still there? All right. Okay. Chat 1, chat 2, chat 3, chat 4, chat 5, chat 6, chat 7, chat 8, chat 9, chat 10, chat 13, chat 14, chat 15, chat 16. Oh, right. That window's there. Done. That window's there. Close. Don't forget, anyone out there, don't forget to like and subscribe. And please, we value your watching it on YouTube. And I've got to look on my YouTube link now. And I'm just going to go with, here we go. And I'm just going to go, just have a quick look on here. If there's anybody written anything. I do believe that Dodgy Git's been on here. Mark McRae, thanks everyone got to go. Really appreciate everybody being online tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Trying to build up the channel. Adil Khan said about doing a thumbnail for us. That'd be great. You've got the email address up there. And don't forget to like and subscribe. That's that done. That's that good. I'm going to close the chat book, chat window on 1. That's nothing in that one. Nothing in that chat window 2, 3, 4, 5. And nothing in that chat window 6. Night night. Diolch yn fawr i chi. Nos da. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Night night.